your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News Weekend Edition with Jeanette Roche.
Hello, thanks for joining us for a look back at Alberta this week. The provincial government says close to 10% of our seniors suffer from elder abuse, and that's 10% too much. To help keep our seniors safe, the province is investing an extra $3.3 million over the next few years to provide more safe spaces for seniors seeking help, especially in rural areas. Seniors Minister Jason Nixon explains where the money is going.
This funding will provide $2.2 million to establish a new Safe Spaces program for seniors experiencing elder abuse in rural Alberta and Indigenous communities to ensure there are safe, accessible places for them to go in communities in rural Alberta and Indigenous communities. The additional $1.1 million of this new funding will also go to Sage Seniors Safe House, where we are today, to expand the number of spaces they provide to seniors fleeing abuse here in Edmonton and the surrounding area.
Nixon says the new funding is on top of the $7.4 million the province has already allocated to prevent elder abuse in Alberta. Lethbridge police have issued a warning about a high-risk sex offender living in the city. Police say 42-year-old Glenn Christopher John Rutledge was released from custody after serving a one-year sentence for breaking the rules of his probation. They say he has a history of sexually offending young girls and poses a significant risk to the community. Rutledge is being monitored by the LPS High Risk Offenders Unit and cannot have access to the internet or contact with anyone under the age of 16. Rutledge is described by police as being 6'1" and 159 pounds with short, dark hair and brown eyes. The case involving 4 Chinook High School football players in Lethbridge charged with assaulting a teammate has been adjourned until December 13th. The defense lawyers say they need more time to build their case. Police allege a 16-year-old boy was assaulted in the school's locker room after school hours on October 3rd. The accused, who are 16 and 17 years of age, have been charged with sexual assault with a weapon, assault with a weapon, and forcible confinement. Police served a search warrant at the school and confiscated a weapon. They have not said what the weapon was, however. A decision was made by the school division to cancel the season for the Chinook Coyotes since the incident last month. Other members of the football team say they've been targeted for harassment, even though they had nothing to do with the incident.
Well, I feel that there's been an entire shadow of fear cast across the whole school. Anybody who associates with the name Chinook, they look at all the boys differently. They look at us as though we're monsters who have committed great atrocities. They compared us to residential school monsters as 16 and 17-year-old boys who just stood in the locker room. And anybody who associates with the name Chinook has been threatened.
Members of the team also say there's a lot of misinformation in the community surrounding the incident. If you recently received a parking ticket from Alberta Health Services, you have an opportunity to clear the ticket without paying. AHS is bringing back its Toys for Tickets campaign, which gives people who've recently received an AHS parking fine an opportunity to donate a new unwrapped toy rather than paying their ticket. The director of parking for AHS explains what they're looking for.
We are looking for a donation of similar value to the amount owed on the parking ticket. And the recommended ages for donations are newborn to 17. So this could be things like art supplies, Lego sets, any kind of baby toys, journals, activity books, crayons, coloring books, just things of that nature. And yeah, so we're, again, it's a very broad range, or age range that we're looking at. So yeah, whatever someone can donate is very much appreciated.
Parking Services will be accepting toy donations as an alternative to paying for tickets issued between November 6th and December 15th. Last year, they collected more than 470 toys province-wide, which was donated to various children's foundations across Alberta. The president of the Alberta branch of the Last Post Fund says their unmarked grave program has run into a problem, but it's a good one. Glenn Miller says his organization's volunteers have discovered many more unmarked graves this year than the program is funded to handle.
Any veteran that lies in an unmarked grave for more than 5 years is eligible through the Last Post Fund under our unmarked grave program to have a military-style marker, either upright, flat, or bronze, whatever is specific to a particular cemetery. These are funded by Veterans Affairs Canada. There's about 600 that they fund every year. We've got a good problem in the sense that we have found many hundreds and even in the thousands now of unmarked graves all across Canada. So we have a backlog of having stones to be installed because there's only so much funding per year.
After the break, we hear from both the province and the opposition NDP on the possibility of Alberta withdrawing from the Canada Pension Plan. Welcome back. A Calgary police officer who was found guilty of assault causing bodily harm in a 2017 arrest has been fired. Constable Alex Dunn was found guilty in 2020 for assaulting Dahlia Coffey, a woman who had been arrested for allegedly breaking her curfew. Dunn had brought Coffey, who was handcuffed to the police station in 2017, and a security camera inside the building captured him throwing her to the ground. A court hearing earlier this year said Coffey was injured when her face struck the floor. Calgary police says Dunn is out of a job following a disciplinary hearing in August. A company that runs a commercial kitchen at the center of the E. coli outbreaks at Calgary's daycares has entered a not guilty plea to municipal bylaw charges. The City of Calgary charged Fueling Minds Incorporated and its 2 directors in September with serving food at childcare centers in the city without a food services business license. They faced 12 charges and fines of up to $120,000. There were around 446 E. coli cases connected to the outbreak, which lasted 8 weeks. 39 children and 1 adult were hospitalized. A trial date has been set for September 6th of next year. The head of the Alberta Sexual Assault Center at the University of Alberta has been fired. Samantha Pearson, who signed an open letter denying women were raped during the Hamas attacks October 7th in Gaza, was officially let go from her position. Alberta Premier Danielle Smith was engaged in the university's decision. The Jewish Federation of Edmonton wrote in a social media post, quote, "Shouldn't a sexual assault center believe all victims and not just the non-Jewish ones?" In a statement, University President Bill Flanagan said, quote, "The University of Alberta stands firmly and unequivocally against discrimination and hatred on the basis of religion, race, ethnicity, and other protected categories." With Alberta's United Conservative Party's pension telephone town halls now complete, the official opposition took opportunity to point out what was not addressed during them. Alberta NDP House Leader Christina Gray says for Albertans wanting to protect their Canada Pension Plan, it appears this may have been the only chance to have their say, something she says is, quote, "shameful."
These telephone town halls have been pre-screened. Only a handful of callers have gotten through on each one of them. And some of the people lucky enough to get through on the line and ask their questions were even yelled at by Jim Dinning, the government's appointed head of this project to gamble away Albertans' pensions. And the feedback from Albertans on the phone hasn't exactly been positive either. As one caller named Doug from Fort McMurray put it, "I'm not going to mince words. I wholly disagree with this." Deb from Calgary said what so many Albertans are thinking when it comes to the CPP, quote, "I'm in favor of staying with the Canada Pension Plan because it works, because it's consistent, because it's reliable, because it's already built. Now the government today will likely say that there's still a survey up online about pensions. But it fails to even ask the question, do you want to leave the Canada Pension Plan in the first place?"
According to Alberta's Affordability and Utilities Minister Nathan Neudorf, Alberta pulling out of the Canada Pension Plan is not a unilateral decision of the government. He says it's still up to Albertans.
We did our work to show what we think the calculations would be. I know there's criticism of that, but we've asked the federal government to come to the table with what they think those numbers should be. And once we have all that information, again, we want to make sure Albertans have all the information. And if they direct us to go towards a referendum, we will do that. And if they say not to, then we'll do that. We're here to serve Albertans, and we think that they should know their options and how much they have contributed to Canada and Canada's well-being. And I look forward to hearing back from Albertans on this issue.
With the ongoing doctor shortage in Alberta, the government announced that it's expanding opportunities for nurse practitioners in the province. They will soon be able to open their own clinics, take on patients, and offer services based on their scope of practice, training, and expertise. Premier Danielle Smith says nurse practitioners can provide around 80% of the medical services a family doctor provides, and this will be reflected in the compensation they receive. Funding will also be made available to help recruit the nurse practitioners.
We're also providing a grant to the Nurse Practitioner Association of Alberta for $2 million over 3 years. This investment will help to recruit and prepare nurse practitioners as they take on more responsibilities, and it will support them as they move to independent practice and take on patients. Nurse practitioners are highly skilled primary care providers with advanced training. They can assess patients, provide diagnosis and treatment, order tests, and prescribe medications. They are a key part of the solution to ease pressure on the primary care providers. And I do want to be clear, Alberta's government is pulling out all the stops to stabilize and strengthen and improve Alberta's primary healthcare system so every single person can have access to a family practitioner.
Still to come, the province's plan to improve internet connectivity in rural areas. Stay with us. Welcome back. The province announced a new agreement with Elon Musk's company Starlink to help provide internet to many rural Albertans. Legislative reporter and the Alberta correspondent with the National Post, Tyler Dawson, chats with Hal Roberts about that, plus a potential motion that, if passed, could have Alberta back in court fighting the carbon tax. Take a look.
A recent motion by an Airdrie MLA could be up for debate at the legislature, and it involves the carbon tax?
The carbon tax, the gift that keeps on giving for the UCP. So this has to do with the exemption that was given for home heating oil in Atlantic Canada. Basically, the carbon tax will no longer be collected on home heating oil in those provinces. This was offered by the Liberals a couple of weeks ago now. And it's been really controversial, of course, all the other premiers saying, look, well, if you're going to take it off home heating oil, you should take it off natural gas, propane, whatever. But the other side of this is when Alberta went to the Supreme Court to get a reference on whether or not the carbon tax was constitutional, one of the things that the government and many people felt was a takeaway of that case was that the carbon tax needed to be applied equitably across the entire country. And so they're basically saying, look, it's no longer applied equitably. Does that mean that the courts should take another look at it? Does that change the material circumstances on the ground because of this policy decision made by the Liberals? Does that change, the constitutionality of the carbon tax? So Angela Pitt is asking for a motion to send another reference case to the Alberta Court of Appeal to sort of answer that question. Now, it's a bit of an odd situation because courts when things change, they don't, go, oh, shoot, we should take another look at that. That's just not how the courts work. So there is the possibility that the motion gets debated, the motion passes, and then the Court of Appeal says, nah, the Supreme Court ruled on this just 2 years ago. We're not going to go through that process again. So that's certainly a possibility. But they may say yes, and we might get another answer on it. And I mean, I think it's a tough road for the UCP if they go that way again. There have always been exemptions to the carbon tax. Farmers, for example, with purple gas are exempted from the carbon tax. So complicated legal situation probably, but frankly, pretty good politics at this moment for the UCP and any other premier who's got people who are paying the carbon tax on their home heating as we go into winter.
With the NDP, Tyler, they've introduced a bill that would have school boards report class sizes and composition to the education minister. Is this because class sizes are getting to be too big, over 30 students per teacher?
Well, that's what they're saying. Yeah, they're saying that, class sizes are 30 plus kids per classroom, which is, as an aside, is kind of funny. I went to school in the 90s and 2000s, and I think that's all, in my mind, that's what all class sizes were. But I guess that was the Klein years and all that. So, but yeah, there used to be reporting on this. The government used to report each year sort of average class sizes and things like that. And I believe that was stopped in 2019. And so they're basically just calling on the government to go back to the system that they used to have, so that we know what class sizes look like. And teachers, I guess, are telling the NDP that they've got, complicated classroom situations. You have people with widely varying educational levels, especially in sort of elementary school, and you also have lots of special needs kids who may or may not be getting the support they need through educational assistance and things like that. So the NDP basically just says, look, this is about transparency. We want to know what's going on in classrooms. Of course, there's the political advantage for them as well, because then they can say, look, the UCP is neglecting the education system or whatever. So would be nice to have those numbers, I suppose. I'm sure parents would be interested in it, but there's certainly a very obviously political agenda for the New Democrats there as well.
Premier Daniel Smith and the UCP have inked a deal with Elon Musk's satellite internet company, Starlink, Tyler, and it offers some good news for many in rural Alberta.
Yeah, and down in your neck of the woods as well. I think it's Warner County, Cardston, and 40 Mile County is the sort of region, I guess, where people can apply to get Starlink internet. The government, I think, is putting about $1,000 towards each resident and business that signs up for this. And so Danielle Smith she's a fan of Elon Musk. She has been for a long time. And so it kind of makes sense that she would be looking to this satellite internet network to solve some of the rural connectivity issues in the province. So, this has been an objective of provincial and federal governments for a long time to try and get better internet in rural areas. And so it's going to be interesting to see how this pilot project works, and if it ends up being in a more sort of expanded relationship with Starlink in the future.
Up next, we speak with Alberta's Affordability and Utilities Minister as many Albertans face the economic challenges of inflation and escalating utility costs. Stay tuned for the details right after this quick break.
We think renewables are a big part of the future. We just need to be able to accommodate their unique characteristics, particularly intermittency, to make sure that we can stabilize the price of electricity for every Albertan.
Well, the pause on the provincial gas tax is scheduled to conclude at the end of next month. It would make life much more expensive for Albertans. We asked Alberta's Affordability and Utilities Minister Nathan Neudorf if government officials have talked about extending the pause on the provincial gas tax beyond the end of the year. Here he is with BCN's Hal Roberts.
I think we would be more concerned about the inflationary pressures that it's going to add all across the country. Affordability is one of our top concerns for all Albertans, and we want to make sure that new affordable housing initiatives are steps in the right direction without adding a whole lot more challenges on top of that. And one of we think the greatest missed opportunities by the federal government was to expand their tax relief on the carbon tax to way more households, treating all Canadians equally. We're very happy for Eastern and the Maritime provinces that they got relief from that carbon tax. But we think Albertans and Saskatchewan, Manitoba, BC, we all have Canadians that need a little bit of relief from that taxation as well. And we would have preferred to see them move in that direction.
How much is that carbon tax really impacting our farmers? As you know, we live in a solid agricultural community here. A lot of the farmers want to see the carbon tax break on propane, natural gas, a lot of the gases they use to dry their grains.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just reading recently in the Calgary Herald, a Lethbridge professor talking about that so many of those grain dryers and other facilities that farmers and ranchers use all the time to make sure that we have the highest quality food in the world to be able to get to market. They're really feeling the impact of that, but it doesn't stop there. It really is impacting our schools, our hospitals, our post-secondary institutions. All of these other levels of great needed services are really feeling the hit.
Nathan, the president of the Rural Municipalities of Alberta says the dialogue we're having right now about renewables should have taken place about 8 years ago. Paul McLaughlin says that's when the NDP pushed through their early exit from coal. Your thoughts?
Well, he is exactly correct. This is exactly what happened. When you change the base characteristics of your entire utility grid, you need to understand how that's going to impact the market. They didn't do that. They didn't have those conversations. We think renewables are a big part of the future. We just need to be able to accommodate their unique characteristics, particularly intermittency, to make sure that we can stabilize the price of electricity for every Albertan. That's the work that we're doing. That's the work that we've asked the Alberta Utilities Commission to look into, as well as the Alberta Electric Systems Operator, to make sure that our market is structured in a way that we can have reliable, dependable, and affordable electricity for all of our constituents.
Your party suspended the provincial tax on gasoline, but only until the end of this year. That's just around the corner. Has there been any talk of potentially extending it, especially with the high cost of living right now and inflation still over 3%? Many Albertans can't afford to take the hit in the new year.
We are looking at every aspect of affordability right now, and particularly with the Minister of Finance, we're looking at all of those things. We are making sure that we're taking fiscal responsibility for the areas that we can. Again, earlier conversation about inflation, we want to make sure that Alberta invests appropriately where we can to help fill those needs, but not overspend so that we are a driving force increasing that. We introduced Bill 1 to reduce the personal income tax. We are very, very conscious and focused on that. In terms of the fuel tax, we are looking at availability and how that can benefit Albertans. Again, we're working through the entire spectrum of affordability options and how our government can help meet those needs for Albertans.
I wanted to get your thoughts on the potential of an Alberta pension plan and Alberta pulling out of the CPP. You know, Premier Daniel Smith says more studying has to be done. We'll have to see a referendum before we move forward. What are your thoughts about a potential APP?
Well, I think right now we are at the stage where we want to inform Albertans about the options of the study that we commissioned a number of years ago. We did not pick a conservative-based entity to do this study. We picked Morneau Chappelle, the company that was set up by the federal Liberal MP, Bill Morneau, who was the finance minister for Canada for a number of years. We did our work to show what we think the calculations would be. I know there's criticism of that, but we've asked the federal government to come to the table with what they think those numbers should be. And once we have all that information, again, we want to make sure Albertans have all the information. And if they direct us to go towards a referendum, we will do that. And if they say not to, then we'll do that. We're here to serve Albertans, and we think that they should know their options and how much they have contributed to Canada and Canada's well-being. And I look forward to hearing back from Albertans on this issue.
As November comes to an end, so does the extra facial hair. We hear from a Movember participant advocating for men's health. Stay tuned. That's right after the break. Welcome back. The month of November is wrapping up, but during the past few weeks, you may have noticed the men in your life becoming a bit more hairy. But the extra facial hair might not have been because their razors were broken. Instead, it's been a fun reminder about a very serious subject. Up next, Naveen Day speaks with Shane DeMerchant about how Movember has helped raise awareness of men's health issues like prostate and testicular cancers and even mental health.
Yeah, one of the first questions that people always ask me is how the mustache became synonymous with the men's health movement. I mentioned this is the 17th annual Movember campaign in Canada. The origins of Movember actually go back 20 years, so 2 decades, starting not in Canada, but in Melbourne, Australia, with a couple of friends sitting around on a Sunday afternoon, having some lunch and some drinks and talking not about men's health necessarily, but men's fashion and the fact that the mustache hadn't really become fashionable yet. I think they were like me, children of the 80s, and had dads growing up watching Magnum PI and Burt Reynolds and growing a mustache at the time. So they said, hey, let's try to bring the mustache back this month. So they spent the month of November growing a mustache, recruited some of their friends to do it with them. And the one thing they all realized in that first year, that first month formerly known as November, was that no matter where they went, people commented on the mustache. So whether it was hanging out with friends or family or at work, everyone asked them what the deal with the mustache was. So they knew they had hit on the power of the mustache to create conversations. They said, let's give ourselves an excuse to do this next year, but put some greater meaning behind it. Started to raise some funds for men's mental health in that first year, specifically prostate cancer in the first year. They realized that at the time, the rates of prostate cancer in men were very similar to the rates of breast cancer in women. Right now, 1 in 8 men in Canada will be diagnosed with prostate cancer in their lifetime. So started to raise not just the funds, but awareness and fastest history of lesson of all time that shoots us forward 20 years, where we've had more than 5 million people globally participate in the Movember campaign in one way or another across 20 plus countries around the globe. So a lot of really, really incredible work that's been inspired by a jokey conversation in Melbourne 20 years ago.
That's just amazing how it evolved into something so amazing and big in such a small amount of time. Now, Movember just isn't a guy thing. How can women actively participate and contribute to Movember's campaigns and awareness initiatives?
Exactly. So I always joke that maybe unsurprisingly, some of our best supporters are women, whether that's guys maybe not being the most organized or relying on the women of their lives to get some initiatives off the ground. But I mentioned the 4 different ways to register. If a mustache isn't your thing, or if you can't grow a mustache, anyone can register to host an event. Anyone can register to stay active this month. I think every single one of us has a man in our life that we care about, that we want to keep around as long as possible. We're losing way too many men too early for a lot of preventable reasons. So if we can get men to be a little bit more proactive with their own health, to check in with their doctor to see what's wrong, to figure out what it means for them to be in the self-care space, in the wellness space, in the proactive space when it comes to their own health. And we all have a role to play there. We encourage anyone to get involved with those conversations this month.
Do you have some stats to share on prostate cancer and maybe also on men's mental health and suicide?
Yeah, so on the mental health side of things, unfortunately in Canada, this is a stat that is pretty consistent across most countries. 3 out of 4 people who die by suicide are men. Suicide's the second leading cause of death in young men and boys between the ages of 15 and 44 in Canada. So we're losing way too many men too early. We're allowing boys and men to get to a point of crisis. And then when they are at that point of crisis, we haven't prepped them with the literacy, we haven't prepped them with the tools, we haven't prepped them with a knowledge of what support is out there once they get to that point. So our mission at Movember is to work upstream and keep boys mentally healthy as much as we can and keep them from getting that point of crisis to that point of crisis. But when they do, we want to make sure that they're comfortable reaching out for help. They know who to reach out to help for, and they've had the conversations before they get there so that they know what's available to them. And like I said, even for my own son, once they get to a point where they're struggling, they recognize that not as a sign of weakness, but say, hey, this is a point of strength for me to know when to reach out to someone else for help.
After the break, an unexpected pregnancy can be scary, but there is support available. More about that after the break.
The programs and support that we offer to the people here in Southern Alberta, we do run a place called Elsie's House where women who find themselves in crisis pregnancies can go for support.